Welcome to the fourth and final of the Let's Build fundraising programs in Little Green Light webinars. My name's Mike Slayton. I'm the owner of Slayton Consulting. And with me today is Chris McGowan from Peak 9860. Is that how you say it, Chris?
That is correct. Yep.
We'll give it a minute or two here, see if we have some more folks coming in. I'm kind of keeping an eye. Oh, here we go. Keeping an eye on the waiting room. Um, but yeah, we've for those of you who have joined us for the other ones or have not, we did grants first, and then we looked at donor retention and mid-level donors. And so we're going to talk about planned giving today. I'm planning to do another of these sets, kind of a series, probably in June, around some other topics. If there's anything you're interested in, please let me know. Or if there's anybody that you think would be a really good presenter to include with this, please let me know. So getting folks in here. So we'll go ahead and get started. Um, Chris, uh, do you want to, my gosh, I meant to have a little bio here to introduce you. Wait, I do. It's on the next slide. I'll say Chris has worked in nonprofit development for more than 30 years, including a long time at the Salvation Army. And I know you have a wide variety of experience, including in planned giving and leadership, and that you now have your own firm, Peak 9860. And I was impressed to see that you're an Eagle Scout.
It was not, that was probably the most challenging thing I've done in my life, to be honest with you. It
I
is,
bet.
yeah. Yeah.
What else? What can you tell us about Peak 9860?
So Peak 9860 came out of the idea that plain giving sort of has this mystery around it. It sort of seems scary and difficult for things. And reality is 92% of the time, plain giving is extraordinarily simple. I tell people all the time that if you're a really good professional fundraiser, I can teach you what you need to know about planned giving in 45 minutes. Really and truly, it is for 92% of the time, it's simply helping the donor do what they're trying to accomplish, fix, or avoid. Now, the other 8% is where the mystery comes, and it is very, very complicated. But for those, all you need to know is who to reach out to get those answers, right? It isn't anything else. And so Peak 9860 came with the idea of training and consulting and coaching, but also hands-on. So because as you know, there's only so many hours in a day, and planned giving, where you're not going to see that gift for years down the road, is often kicked down the road. And so we wanted to be able to offer nonprofits, small to mid-sized nonprofits, high quality service at a fractional rate. So they, get, 2 or 3 hours a week or a month, whatever they need to actually go in and cultivate their donors and put together their program and make it actionable for someone who's laser focused on that, who isn't going to get caught up on answering the donor email or going to get another committee meeting or whatever that looks like. So that's where it came about, and it has gone really well. People have received it extraordinarily well. And I've enjoyed doing it because I get to work with all amazing number of different nonprofits across the whole spectrum of causes.
Great, great. And of course, what we're going to do today is show people some of the simple ways they can kind of get this started in Little Green Light. So, you can have a base program even in a small shop. Um, I did want to say if you're joining us, if you can put your name and your organization in the chat. I always like to know where people are coming from, and what your position is there, and if you have any experience, if you all are doing any planned giving, or if you're starting from scratch. Now, Chris, you sent me this definition for planned giving, so I won't read it, but maybe you'll want to read it.
I'll use my radio voice. Yeah. So plain giving is one of those things. It doesn't have a clear definition. People have a wide variety of things they use to define plain giving and types of gifts they put into plain giving. And so I've found it best to start with sort of this baseline of when I say plain giving, actually mean. And when I define plain giving as an intentional method of giving in which the donor considers a nonprofit among their spouse, family, and loved ones. And so it is and then it's a gift ultimately that isn't received typically for some period past that. But it really is designed when they're putting your nonprofit, your cause, your mission that they view as their mission in their plans along with their loved ones. It's the greatest gift and the greatest honor that a nonprofit can receive in my book.
And Jonathan shared in here that they're struggling with how to pitch it without being creepy, which I think is probably like the number one thing people have to kind of, I don't know, get over or come to terms with or understand about, like, how do we talk about this without seeming like we're yeah, being creepy.
Yeah,
um
that unfortunately is an obstacle that I hear and talk about all the time.
Yeah. So as we get in here, some of the tools that we're going to look at in Little Green Light, and if you've been in some of these other programs the last couple of weeks, we've used several of these in other ways as well. We're going to look at documents, constituent categories, goals is going to be a big one, contact reports and tasks, and then relationships. So those are some of the things we'll be using as we build this program. But this one I think is going to be less intensive, less tech heavy than some of the others where we had so much tracking and all these different moves, because this is just kind of a different animal. Um, so with that, let's build a planned giving program in Little Green Light. So Chris, well, well, my brilliant method of tabbing here was, oh, I was going to so seamlessly tag. I practiced this and then Zoom messed it up. Okay, just pretend that I seamlessly
You
transitioned from
seamlessly transition.
this.
I'm impressed. It was magical.
There's so much work that goes on behind the scenes. All right, so Chris, what's the first thing? What's the most important thing? Where do we start if we have nothing
If you
for
have
planned giving?
nothing, it's important to start with a strong foundation, and that foundation really comes down to policies and procedures. So, having a clear written guide for you as the fundraiser and for the organization will help you talk about it and give the donor they need that when that gift comes through, they're going to do what they want to do. So that is going to be your planned giving gift acceptance policy, and that's going to involve things like when donors use this specific wording, this is exactly what we're going to do. We will take these types of gifts. We won't take these types of gifts. These types of gifts will help the donor work through, but we can't do that. We can't serve as a trustee, or we won't manage a gift annuity program or pooled income fund, or we will or will not serve as an executor of an estate. And if we're going to serve as an executor of an estate, which by the way happens far more than you might imagine when nonprofits do that. If we are going to serve as the executor of estate, what does it require? What has to happen in a will? What do we need to get out of it? So having those policies and procedures in place, clearly delineated, will help you as the nonprofit and help the donor understand expectations and be comforted knowing that when they pass away and they can no longer defend their choices, what they've agreed to and what you've agreed to is actually going to happen because it's a policy and procedure that's been approved by the board and is executed as a formal document.
Now,
So
I'm gonna step out on a limb here and say my guess is that for a small nonprofit, they should not agree to be somebody's executor unless they really feel like they know what they're doing. Having been an executor, having been an administrator, I
yeah, well, it's not really the nonprofit size, it's the comfort of the person who's going to do that executor. So if you're going to go that route, I always encourage you don't name an individual. I always tell the donors don't name the individual, name the role. And that role then can delegate. So, for example, you could name the executive director of um, the Superior River Watershed Association, or the Rivers Watershed Association, and name that an organization. And then that person, whoever the executive director is at the time, whenever that person passes away, can then go hire an attorney. Right. So it doesn't have to be the person. So don't name I always tell donors, don't name the person. But so it isn't really the nonprofit that doesn't have to do it. In fact, I would encourage most nonprofits not to do it, to accept the role if they so choose, but to not actually carry it out because there's just too many ways to mess that one up. Hiring a professional, it comes out of the estate costs, and so while it does diminish your gift a little bit, it's cleaner and it avoids all the issues that you might worry about from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we went down a rabbit hole pretty
We do.
quickly
I
there.
love rabbit trails. Yes.
So this is where if we go to activity and we go to documents, this is where we can use this when we create our documents. I've made a planned giving type here, and so if you were here for the grants presentation, we did the same thing where we kept some of our boilerplate language in Little Green Light as a document. One of the nice things about documents is you don't have to attach them to a record. Almost everything else in Little Green Light a task or anything like that is attached to somebody's record. Documents we could just create in there without having them attached. You can also create an internal constituent if you want to keep documents like this. If you put your organization in there and attach the document to it. I'll go open these. These are all completely, um, just a completely made up document here. But so I created an overview, and then I created, go back to my plan giving. I created a gift acceptance policy and sample bequest language, right? What are some of the basic documents we would
The
want?
that's the two are the gift acceptance policy and that sample language. That sample language is going to be key. And if we're talking about promoting that sample language, yeah, having all of those are great. But when we're promoting it, generally, I encourage nonprofits to only promote one. Pick some language, whichever one you want to use, and use that consistently and persistently with the tagline, if this doesn't meet your need, please let us know. We'll be happy to provide detailed information. And what they want to do may not be one of those, right? And so when they want to do that, then you go back to the board and you say, board, this is what the donor wants to do. Do you agree to that? Yes. And that becomes formalized when this wording comes in. This is precisely what's going to happen. It becomes another recommendation of your language. So it's in there as your policy of this language equals this language equals this. And that gives you that confidence to be able to go back to the donor. Yes, we are able to use that gift, that language, and the board has approved it and ratified it. So this is what's going to happen. And it gives that donor this real peace of mind that what they want to do is going to happen.
Now, do I need to understand charitable remainder trusts and gift annuities? And there's like 100 ways that planned giving can happen, right? Do I
Right.
do I need to be understanding those? Do I need to know what do I need to know about that?
So, assuming that your nonprofit is not going to step into the role of administration. So, you're not going to service the trustee. You're not going to manage a charitable gift annuity. You're not going to manage a pooled income fund or a life estate or any of that kind of stuff. Then all you need to know is that they exist, and all they need is the exact same wording that you're going to use in a will gift. So, in a charitable remainder unit trust, which is the most common dollar wise, the largest segment outside of wills that donors use outside of, anyway, doesn't matter. It's going to be the exact same word, right? In that language, they're going to divvy up the remainderment of that trust the same way they divvy up their estate plan. So you wouldn't bequeath at that point, but you would give whatever that amount is, whether it's a percentage or a specific dollar amount. Trusts go both ways. Normally percentages, but trusts do what they call above the fold, is generally what we call them, bequest or gifts out of a trust. And then your tax ID number. I always encourage nonprofits to put their tax ID in the language, not their address. We don't know where you're going to be when they die, and we don't have to worry about them changing it. But some nonprofits have names similar to other nonprofits. So I'm on the board of Alley Cat Advocates here in Louisville, and which is ironic because I hate cats, but that's neither here nor there. Their job is to spay and neuter. It's all about that, right? Reducing the cat population. But they're very, very similar to another much larger organization called Alley Cat Allies. And so we want to make sure that our tax ID number is in that language to make sure there's no confusion, right? So even if it says Alley Cat Allies and then has our tax ID, that rules. So that's the non-distinguisher. So the courts have said that's going to qualify. So, I give to the name of the organization, their tax ID number, and then the type of gift it is going to be, whether it's a specific dollar amount or percentage or whatever. That's all that needs to be in there. That's the same for a trust, a gift annuity, life estate, all those have the same language. So at that point, all the donors coming to you for is to say, okay, I want to benefit you through my charitable trust or whatever. How do I do that? You're going to do that. You're going to use this language. You're going to go back to whoever's crafting your document for you and give them this language.
And you said, and I don't know if you've said this here, what percentage of planned gifts come through wills?
86%, I believe, off the top of my head. It's 92% are the symbol. So it's wills. I think it's 86. The next largest is IRA beneficiary, and then life insurance beneficiaries. Those three account for 92% of all planned gifts.
So the vast
And
majority that we would be dealing with are going to be somebody's
wills.
will.
Yeah. And will is what I always encourage nonprofits to talk about, right? So whether they have a will or not, they think they know what it is. They know they need a will, or at least they assume they need a will, even though 7 out of 10 Americans don't have a current up to date will, which is the terrifying, which is really the tool nonprofits can use to really start the conversation, by the way, is by education. But we'll come back to that in a little bit later. By talking about wills, it gives you that starting point. So even if they want to go down the trust, they still have to have a will, right? So you can start the conversation there and then move into it as you move through.
So we talked about the policies. We need to have those in place, and it in a lot of these things, it's probably some things it's important what the policy says, or there's some best practices. A lot of things it's really going to be up to the nonprofit to make a decision about, and it's just a matter of being consistent, right?
Correct. And know that it's a living document, that as donors come back with different suggestions, different ideas, that document's going to evolve because while the vast majority of donors will use the exact language you suggest because ultimately they know you know best, there's always going to be some who wants something different, something unique, and wants to go to the specific cause, the specific purpose, the specific thing, this specific element of it. And sometimes it's so specific you can't do it, right? You can't. There's too many strings attached to that for us to accept that because we just don't know what the future holds. And so we can take it if you add this caveat, right? So it is very much a living document, and having that is going to be the tool. So I tell people when you're starting your plan giving gift acceptance policy, it only needs to be a couple of bullet points about what you will and won't take, your standard language and what will happen with that, and then who is going to evaluate the next step, right? So when a will comes in, which the vast majority of the time, the survey we did, about 60% of planned gifts the nonprofit did not know about prior to it hitting their desk after the donor's death, which we refer to as a matured gift. After the gift matures. So when that gift comes in and they didn't use your language, who's going to do that, right? Is it a committee? Is it the board? Is it the financial? It doesn't matter to me, but having that as part of the policy, when a gift comes in that doesn't meet this language, this is the policy for how we're going to decide to use this gift, whatever that is.
So
And then
let's
that
talk.
goes. Good.
Yeah, let's talk about working with donors with this, right? So as you said, a lot of gifts came in. Somebody in the chat was sharing they had a $25,000 endowment set up for them, to their surprise. A lot of gifts come in unexpectedly. But of course, what we're talking about is talking with donors, current donors, about making a planned gift, right? So how do we start that conversation? What does that look like with people?
All right. So rule number one is planned giving, while I've given you a definition, doesn't mean anything to anybody, right? Your donor writes a check and they plan it, right? They don't just spontaneously pull out their credit card or their DAF or whatever, right? It's a thought process. It's planned. So planned giving is a stupid term. There isn't a good term for it at all. The current term that's in vogue right now is charitable gift planning, and that's just as stupid. It just is, right? They're going to plan, again, they're planning their charitable actions, right? So it just is foolish. But plan giving is even more nebulous than some of the others. So I always encourage donors. That's inside baseball, right? We don't use that with the public. We don't use that with donors. We don't say I want to talk to you about planned giving. We don't say if you consider planned giving, right? What I encourage organizations to do is to take this bifurcated approach. One is you pinpoint 10, 12 people who you want to go proactively talk about benefiting your mission through their will, right? That's the language, through your will. And then the second one is a very, very broad, everybody, like everybody who is on your database, everybody who isn't on your database, but is watching your social media feeds or comes to an event. All of those people are potential prospects for a planned gift. And for that, the conversation is, again, always a gift through my will. So when you're doing a post on a program, you can talk about, add a tagline inside of that. You can endow this program to ensure its future with a gift through your will. Here's the language, right? You can do it in your newsletters, a call out box. Anything you're doing now, you can do. You can add plan giving language without calling it plan giving language. And I always encourage donors, because so many donors, with such a large percentage of gifts are will gifts, and it's a starting point no matter what. Just talk about gift by will. That's the language you're using. You could endow this, you can support this, you can insure it, you can benefit this, whatever language you want to use, depending on where your organization is, through or with a gift through your will. And by using that language, it takes away the scariness of it. It takes away the immediacy of it, because they may need a will now, but they're not going to use the will, hopefully, for a very long time to come. And so it gets away. You mentioned earlier that creepiness feeling, right? So when you're talking about a gift through the will, you can have that conversation with an individual saying, "Hey, this is your chance to plan what you want to do." Right? I tell people all the time, if you only have 2 pennies to your name, it's your right and your obligation to determine where those 2 pennies go. Don't make your heirs figure it out. Right. So there are laws set aside if you don't do that. But those laws, I promise you, do not include your nonprofit. And those laws, depending on what state you're in, may not even be what you've wanted. Right. So Kentucky is an up, down, out state. So it goes first up to spouse and parents, then down to children. Yes. Parents, then children. Go ahead and figure that one out. And children equally in the same way. Right. And for me personally, I know full well my oldest child can handle the lump sum. He would probably die with that same amount of money in his bank account at 90. My youngest son would not only spend his share, he'd borrow some from his brother within about first 10 minutes of getting it, right? So I can't treat them the same, even if I give them the same amount of money. So having that will is the way to talk about it, about leaving your legacy. If you want to call it legacy giving, fine, but I don't encourage that. Again, most donors don't want to leave a legacy, sadly, but they do want to leave a remembrance of what they cared about. And a gift through a will is the language I use consistently through that.
And so we're going to get in a minute. We're going to get to when we've got a commitment and how we handle that. But let's say we've talked to a donor, whether it's through somebody we identified, or it was just we did our scattershot approach and they said, "Yeah, I'm interested." One of the things I've done in here for Lois Lane, who she's expressed interest. I've just created another constituent category. I think a lot of times people use groups in Little Green Light for everything, and it becomes cluttered and it's too easy to change. I've created a constituent category here for planned giving, and so if we've identified Lois as somebody we want to talk to, I can put her down as a prospect. Or if she said, "Hey, I'm interested in this," I can put her down as interested. How complicated do we need to get in that sort of tracking?
So, assuming, and I hope you are, going to follow up with these individuals, right? So you put a checkbox on your direct mail remit that says, "Please tell me how I can benefit XYZ organization in my will," right? Highly encourage that. And you do that, but the only thing you have is an address. Well, you want to track that they inquired, right? So you can create your follow-up of how you're going to educate them, even though the majority of time they're not going to respond to you. That's just the reality. They're not interested in talking to you. But you do want to track it so you can follow with them, so you can talk to them, so you can invite them to events, so you can change your language in variable text to help involve that, right? So if you have people you're using the term interested, the organization I worked with forever used a horrible term called suspect. I hated the term, but it actually was we suspect they're interested in it because they've done something to do that. And then prospect, right? Someone I'm actively working in that. And then you have the committed, right? They've made a gift. They are committed. And then if you want to indicate somehow they've fallen out of the track, right? You've gone down the process and they say, "You know what? I'm really not going to do this. I'm going to leave everything to my kids, nothing to your organization." Then that is a declined or not interested or whatever that is, right? Those are all you need. You get beyond that, it gets too complex and it becomes unwieldy and unuseful. What's important is because that's, remind me again, Mike, those are user defined roles, right? You created those, correct?
Yeah, these are constituent categories that I created.
right. And
and
the and
that
that
they
interested
attach to the
whatever
donor.
the interested and the whatever those you created that list,
Yeah,
right? So you can name it whatever you want to name it, but in your
we can add
policy,
suspect if we want.
no, we don't. We want to add that. It was horrible. In that policies document, you're going to say when they are constituent of plan giving, or this is when to mark the constituency of plan giving, right? The constituent group or constituent category. And these are the checks, and this is how we define them. A prospect is someone whom we're actively working with towards a gift. And interested is someone who has expressed interest but has not yet responded or for whom we aren't currently working. So you have those very clear definitions so you can consistently use it so that whoever looks at a database, or if you have to go pull a report for your board or whatever, talk about how you're doing it because, plan giving is not going to see the money coming in. So you have to show activity. This will help you break it down in a way that makes sense. And it allows whoever's entering the data, whoever's reviewing the data to know exactly what to do, where to code it and how to code it. And that report they'll know exactly where to go looking for because they know everybody has access, knows the first place you go is documents because the documents are where the definitions are.
And then one of the nice things about we can do this with categories, we can do this with a lot of different things, but we can create a list. And I've created a planned giving list. And this just includes, all I did was I included everybody who has a planned giving, anything other than declined, shows up on my list. And I have this now as a favorite on my dashboard. So I can see my planned giving list right there anytime I want to. And I could limit that to prospects. I could limit that to people who've expressed interest, whatever I'm working with. Or if we're using stewards in here, I could limit it to my donors in my portfolio. So I want to look at some of the goals here. So let's say we looked at Lois, but Clark is also interested.
Well, or Clark's not going to die, so that's problematic. I mean, doesn't he
Actually,
live? I mean,
Clark's going to be a spoiler alert. Clark's going to be
yeah.
my example here,
I mean, I'm just
here in a
saying.
second. I had Tom Jones when we were doing this earlier, but I was like, I don't want to wish Tom Jones any ill. So Clark, I have him in here. I made a planned gift. I thought this is a good example of somebody mentioned that we're going to be in the will. We have no idea beyond that. And so I put him in as a planned gift bequest with $1. How would should I go to Clark and be like, hey, can I get this in writing? Can I get a copy of your will? Do I need to demand
yeah, so there's one of
documentation?
those policies that you as an organization need to define very, very early. My take is always trust the donor. What's the worst case scenario? Right? The worst case scenario is you send them plan giving information that they didn't use. I mean, that really and truly. So there are organizations that will only count you as a planned gift if your gift is irrevocable or if your planned gift is verified in some way. You've signed a document, you have given us a copy of the will, whatever that is. And I won't say they're wrong. What I'll say is nothing will throw cold water on a relationship quite like saying, thank you so very much for letting us know you've included us in your will. Will you please sign this agreement to verify that so I can take credit for it? Or whatever language you want to use, right? It just horribly jeopardizes the relationship. No matter how strong your relationship is, it's going to make a significant withdrawal from that trust bank as soon as you do that. So I would do everything in my power to help the organization understand that when a donor says, I've included you in my will, that's sufficient to count them as a plan giving donor in our system and in how we treat plan giving donors. So that's all it's going to take.
And I created a gift here. And, one of the things about gifts is you only have two categories. You have major gift and grant proposal. I included it as a major gift and I put planned gift at the front and the type. So I think that's a way to keep this separate from any of your major gifts. The good thing about a goal is it's not going to show up in any of your reports, it's until there's a pledge or something. I created two statuses in here and I made them planned giving interest, planned giving commitment, as opposed to grants or other things, just to keep these clear on these different statuses. I thought there's probably only two we need here, Chris, right? We've got commitment. And then if somebody is interested in it, we're really talking to them about them. It's beyond just, oh, I'm interested, but like, hey, yeah, will you come talk to me about this? we would
Right.
put them in at that level.
And so this goes then now back to that original document that you're talking about in the documents tab of how are we defining it. So we define that if we're putting a goal in for plan giving, this is the naming format we always use. We always use plan giving dash whatever the gift type is. And here are the gift types, bequest and whatever it is you're going to use. And if you add a new one because someone said, hey, listen, I've named you in my living trust, right? Which isn't that common, but it does happen. I've named you my living trust. Now I'm going to go back to that document, add this, and make sure that language is in here. And this is when we use it. The same is true of that status. This is when we use that status. This is when we don't use that. And this is how we use this status. If you need to add another one for some reason, and I don't know what they would be, off the top of my head, add it and then add that language to your documentation so that whoever's doing it next time knows exactly how to do it. Whoever's looking at it knows exactly how to interpret it. Now, as far as dollar amounts, organizations do a whole wide range of things. One organization I work with always uses their founding year date as dollars and cents. So they do $19.07. That's when they don't know a dollar amount. That's, they do their so they know when they see that weird amount that they don't really know a gift amount. Some just leave it as a zero. Some leave it as put it as a penny, as a dollar. Other nonprofits have decided that if we don't know the amount, this dollar amount based on our 5 or 10 years of study, this is our average gift amount of a will. Our average gift amount of a will is $38,000. So we're going to put it in as $38,000. And we may do $38,001, right? Just so we know it's close, but not the exact same thing. And so that's what they've decided to do. It doesn't matter what you choose. What matters is that you do choose and then you're consistent with it and it's in those policies and procedures so that you know exactly what to do and when to do it.
And I'm going to have to do this without a lot of ceremony, but I'm going to have to kill Clark Kent, I think. And for the purposes of going through the rest of this, or we're going to,
Kryptonite, if I remember correctly. I don't remember.
We're going to mature his gift, so to speak. So God forbid Clark dies, and we know we are in his will. Couple things we're going to do here. So the first thing is, of course, we're going to mark Clark deceased in little green light. And we're going to put deceased date. Let's say it was first of this year. And then that will, that's good to do. We're not going to delete his record ever. But having him be deceased is going to automatically pull him out of any mailings, any emails, anything like that. But what we're going to do, a lot of people, of course, would just put the planned gift in under him. But technically, what we should do from a best practices standpoint, and just I always think your database, your accounting, all of that should mirror what actually happened as much as possible. And what really happens is when you get the planned gift from a bequest, it's not from the individual, it's from their estate, which is a new entity. So we would create a new constituent, and it would be we could call it Clark Kent Estate, or you could call it Estate of Clark Kent, which usually I think Clark Kent Estate is the more official one, but probably Estate of Clark Kent will be a little cleaner in your listings, right?
And again, it doesn't matter what you do as long as you're consistent.
And then a lot of times we'll put the executor.
Oh, that's just harsh. That's harsh.
He was implicated.
I believe we might have undue influence here.
Yes.
So you're absolutely right, because I've always believed that the gift should reside on the record that the receipt goes to. The receipt doesn't go to Clark. Clark can't file taxes this year. Well, right. But the estate has to. They have their own tax ID. They're going to. So wherever the receipt goes is where the gift should rest.
And this is one of the places we're going to add a relationship. So we're now going to connect this constituent, the estate, with Clark. And I created this type the other day. We're going to add it as estate. And this constituent is related to, and the estate is, I'm sorry, I did this wrong. Clark Kent is related to the constituent as decedent, the person who has died, and the estate is related to Clark Kent as estate. And so I'm going to save that. And now we'll have this relationship between the two that is there recorded. We can also, if we wanted to, if it's important for our organization, we can add another relationship. We could, as Lex is in here, we can put Lex Luthor in, and in this case, we would add a new one. He's the executor. Executor.
And just
Uh,
just if you're going to do that, I always recommend administrator. It's the gender neutral one. So you don't have to have executor and executrix, but administrator is gender neutral. It leaves that way you just have to have one.
all
Although I do
right.
love the term executrix. I think
It
that's an
is
awesome
good.
term. Yeah,
Yes. Well, and technically, an administrator is when there is not an executor appointed by the court, right?
that is true.
Or
That
when
is true.
when there's not an executor, the administrator is appointed. I've having been an executor and an administrator, I've gotten to know both of those things. So we've added the estate, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to Clark's goal and for his planned giving, and we're going to edit this, and we're just going to change the constituent, and we change it from Clark to the state of Clark Kent, and we can put that in there. And then once we know, okay, Clark left us $15,000, oops, we can put that in. And then this is still not going to show up in any of our reports, but what is very likely is we're going to find out we might want to add a pledge where once the executor tells us, okay, we're getting this gift, um, we are notified. Now it's going to show up in our records when we pull our report. So especially if we get this commitment in November and we know it's going to be 6 months, it might be March before we get the gift. We want to reflect it on our books. We can do that as a pledge from the estate.
Right.
And then this is good because it's very clear we don't have an outstanding pledge from someone who's passed away. Um, the other thing we can do with the goal, just to mention this quickly, is we can, of course, if they pick a fund, we can put it unrestricted, or if they say I wanted this to go to the scholarship fund, we can do that. And I created a campaign. This wouldn't necessarily be necessary, but we could have a planned giving campaign created just as a way to track that. So if we ever wanted to know how many gifts came in from planned gift or from planned giving or from legacy giving, whatever we want to call it, we've got a way to track that. I don't think there's anything necessarily more that we should do to track it in terms of an event or an appeal or anything like that. Um, but that's
No.
that's the quick and easy version of going over the goals there.
And the great part is with this now you can upload the letter to that you got notifying you of the gift. You can upload that, and so it's in there as documentation of what it is. If you choose to do so, you can add the law firm who's now involved with that, so you have that information. You may choose not to; may not be of value to you to add them as a beneficiary, but as a member. But remind me, Mike, there's a way to do it that isn't a true constituent, but they're part of a record. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. So if we're on the estate of Clark Kent, if we didn't want to add Lex Luthor, we could just add that Bruce Wayne is actually the. I'm doing this in a really weird way. Let me go ahead and edit this. We can add Bruce Wayne as the contact there, right? If that was the person who's actually handling it instead of we don't want to include Lex Luthor. We'll just go ahead and change this. Oh well, I don't want to mess it too much, but
Well, no, I mean, it doesn't need to be Bruce Wayne, right? It could be Frank Davison at the law firm that what's his name?
Lex Luthor.
Lex Luthor engaged, right? So
Yes.
they would much rather you talk to the lawyer than to them, right? Because they're too busy with their evil plans taking over the world to answer your emails, whereas the attorney is actually the point of contact. So it gives you that ability to do that and to know who to contact without having to add another record to your constituency and worry about them getting mail or email or whatever else.
Yeah. And one thing I want to show just as to wrap this up, we have some time for questions. So I created a planned gift goal for Lex Luthor also. He's listed as being interested because donors said they wanted to learn more about planned giving and requested a meeting. And this is where, just like any other project, we can use contact reports and tasks. We can say, we can create, oops, sorry, my pop-ups are going on here. Okay, we can create a contact report call and say, you know, interest call. Lex asked about remembering us in his will. And we can add different information and we can save that. And then we can add a task that needs to be a follow-up. And the task can be meeting with attorney. Maybe they've asked us to come and meet with them and their attorney. And we can say that's going to happen at the end of the month. And so we've created that, and that's now attached to the goal. For some reason, I was moving too fast, and my contact report did not get attached to the goal. So let's see if I can fix that real quick. There we go. I'm going to attach that to the goal. So now, just like with anything else we're doing with a donor, with this goal, we can track our activity. So if something happens, if this person passes away 10 years down the road and we had no idea they were even in here, we've got some record of when we communicated with them.
Right.
So those are some of the tools that we can use there. I want to make sure we have time for questions. Anything else we haven't covered, Chris?
No, other than the one thing we didn't cover is the language in any degree. So I've talked about it a few times, and I'll bring it up again just to really fine tune this. The thing that causes nonprofits the greatest angst is determining what language to use. All right, so the specific language you want to recommend. So spend some time with your board, with your leadership, with your donors, whoever you want to bring into that conversation and say, okay, this is what we want to use. And make it as simple as possible so that you're using that language consistently and persistently across your board. So make sure it's exactly the way you want it to be. It's going where you want it to go. So having that conversation, do we want it to go to general operating? Do we want it to go to an endowment? Where do we want it to go? Knowing that donors always ultimately have the control, but what are we going to recommend? Because so often donors will use what you put out there without ever telling you, without ever questioning it. So being consistent with that and persistent with that and knowing exactly what you want to happen. I find that's where I get the most delay in working with nonprofits is actually honing that language. What do we want it to go, Jerome? And it doesn't matter to the donor. What matters to the donor is that's what you're recommending. So make that choice, make that decision, and push it out constantly.
And this is not. I asked ChatGPT to give me some sample language for the demo. So please don't take any of this to be anything that should be used. But it could be as simple as this, right? It shouldn't be any longer than what's on here. Well, any questions?
It was magic. At least the way you popped to that. Yes.
I know it was so, I had this all ready. It was going to be so seamless. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, be happy to answer them, or anybody has any experiences they want to share of something planned giving that has happened with your organization or a practice you do. And if not, I do have a question for you, Chris. I'll give it a minute to here, see if anybody else does as well. But I wanted to know, once we've got we kind of skipped from the commitment to the maturation of the gift, but once somebody has committed to being they've informed us that they've made a planned gift. We've got them listed in there. What kind of stewardship is involved at that point?
So it's important to think about planned gifts in the terms of what you're going to get rather than in terms of this nebulous concept. So I always encourage nonprofits to cultivate that donor the same way you'd cultivate any other donor of that size. So know that the vast majority of planned gifts, nearly all, like 97% of planned gifts, are either revocable or editable. So even a charitable trust is an irrevocable document, but the nonprofit can be changed. So they can't take the money back, but they can change what's in it most of the time. And so cultivating that, because it doesn't matter if you're in the document today, it only matters if you're in the last document, right? And so continuing that relationship and that cultivation, that conversation for those who've told you to do that. One tool for that might be a Planned Giving Society. For that, I'm not opposed to Planned Giving Societies at all. I think they're amazing, but I would never encourage a nonprofit to start a Planned Giving Society if they don't already have a major giving society. So it should be a tool in what you're already doing rather than a separate track. So it becomes, another listing in an annual report or another element of cultivation and conversation, not something specific about Plan Giving when you're cultivating them, except to the point of you're following up with them. You're not calling them and saying, "Hey, are you still alive? We haven't got a check yet," or you aren't saying, "Hey, are we still in your will?" You're just simply reporting back to them about what's happening in the organization, same as you would any other major donor, so that they can stay connected to that organization and to your organization and stay connected to their gift. What we find is the vast majority of times donors change what's going to the nonprofit through their lifetimes. And so it may start out really, really small because their kids are still young, but it may grow as the kids come out on their own. They don't need the funds anymore. The house is paid off. You may see that percentage or that dollar amount increasing. And that's only going to do it, though, if you've cultivated the relationship in a way that makes sense to them. Now, you can also cultivate those relationships without knowledge. So sharing information in your email and in your e-newsletter and in that shares the same information with the general public so that those who have done it but not told you are getting some element of cultivation. Again, referencing planned gifts and that. And donor stories are a powerful tool, right? So if a donor agrees while they're alive to share why they benefited, not the dollar amount, right? Never the dollar amount. Normally, the style of gifts, I decided to leave XYZ charity in my will because is a very powerful tool because they can start to see themselves. Oh, I believe that too. If you don't know where else to start the conversation, start it with the idea of endowing their annual gift. So if they give $1,000 every year, having a conversation about what that $1,000 does and what it would mean if you didn't have that is a natural way of saying, for just $25,000 through your estate plan, you can endow that $1,000 so it continues through perpetuity. So your impact continues to grow as we grow and make that difference that you're making right now. That's a very easy conversation to have.
And I want to, Nisha had a question about here about how I added the interested um, category under planned giving. So what I did with that is I went to settings and subscription settings, or sorry, menu items. Um, and then you got all these different places you can add menu items. Constituent categories is one of them. And every one that I create is going to be under here now. And I can just add a new one if I wanted to. But planned giving is one of the ones I added. And so I created these values and I added suspect when I was talking to Chris, and I don't want to do that. I'm going to deactivate that one. And then I can delete it, but I can also leave it. I can leave it in there, but in this case, I want to deactivate it. So I could add a new value if I wanted to. We think we'll just add, I don't know, qualified prospect, which probably wouldn't be something we would really use here. And then I can also, one of the nice things is I can reorder this if I don't want it to be in alphabetical order. I want it to be kind of more in, there we go. We want interested and then prospect, um, then I can do that. And so when I add the constituent category, it's going to be on the constituent record. If I want to add something to the gift, that's going to be attached to individual gifts, I would add that as a custom field to the gift. Tanya said, I've used identified instead of suspect. I think that sounds like a much better. I would not want to find out I was a suspect in somebody's database.
Listen, I am not defending that terminology at all. I would love anytime we can do better than that. I'm all about it. But
so I want to before we run out of time here, I want to share. Thank you all for joining us. I hope this has been helpful. My plan is to do another Let's Build in June, and tentatively, I'm open to better suggestions if people have something else they want to hear about. But I was thinking we'll do Let's Build a campaign, and we'll go through building an appeal, a ticketed event, some great emails, donation pages, really get into some nuts and bolts stuff there. And then if anybody's interested in help with any of these subjects, Chris and I and John and Elena, who've both been part of this, and some other consultants, we're all doing a 5 free hours offer in April. And I'll be sharing that information with everybody who's been on these. So qualifying nonprofits can apply April 1st to April 30th. And we're going to try, each of us is going to try to take up to 5 nonprofits and just do 5 free hours of consulting on anything we can help you with, really. So we'll be sending out information about that. I'll also, of course, at the end of this next week, I'll send out a final email to everybody with all of the recordings and all the different handouts and things and all the contact information. So everybody will have that. If you want to visit Chris's website and stay in touch, or visit my website, you can do that. Those are, I'll send you the links as well in the email, but the QR codes will take you there as well. And there's probably one more slide, which is thank you. That was what I ended on. So thank you all so much. Chris, anything?
Last thing I say, if you go to our website, peak9860.com, there's a resources tab on it, and in that is a bunch of free resources for you, including a calculator that we used. We put together some really solid numbers to help you determine, based on your donor file size, what might be in there as far as hidden plan gifts. So if you're curious, like what is the potential for my organization, there are two calculators: a simple one and a complex one, depending on how well you know your data. And the better you know your data, the better it will help you determine what your plan giving is. So
here we go. Simple calculator. All
yep.
right. Yeah. That's that's more than I was thinking I was going to do on the do live. But
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, no, it
Looks like a great resource.
it's not overly complex, but it does require you know some data about your donor base and how many donors you have, active and inactive.
Okay. Yeah. How many donors you have? Oh, that looks great. And then so if I have 12,000 donors and they're giving at this level, I could have $10 million in planned gifts potentially.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Chris, I know, is available to help with all this sort of stuff. And again, if you have any subjects you'd like to see covered in something like this, please let me know. And appreciate everybody coming.
Thanks so much.